Well, the Russian military says it's opening a humanitarian corridor for civilians to evacuate the steel plant in Mariupol. The Russian Defense Ministry said troops will cease fire to allow civilians to safely exit the plant. Ukrainian officials have said up to 1,000 civilians are currently sheltered there. Now, this comes one day after Ukraine claimed Russian forces attempted to storm the facility. So for the latest now from Ukraine, we're joined live by CTV's Omar Sachedina on the ground in Borodyanka, that is northwest of Kyiv. So Omar, what's the latest on that situation we were just talking about in Mariupol?
I think the key word, Nick, that you used right now is that Russia says. I think we have to be skeptical of this plan. There have been multiple attempts to try to establish a humanitarian corridor, but certainly the latest information we have so far this morning is that the Russians appear to be at least willing to allow the 1,000 civilians who have been holed up in that steel facility in Mariupol a chance to be able to leave and get to a safer area. As for the 2,000 Ukrainian soldiers who remain holed up, there is no idea of what will happen to them. They have defiantly maintained that stronghold in that steel facility, even as the Russians have basically overtaken about 95% of that strategic port city in the south of Mariupol. So that is the latest on the situation there in that city. As for what other developments there are this morning, we are hearing that there have been at least five strikes against rail and fuel facilities in the western part of the country, far from where much of the focus has been intensifying and the fighting has been intensifying in the eastern region of the Donbass. So this is a troubling development in a war that has now lasted for more than 2 months, now entering its third month and its 61st today.
Absolutely, Omar. And on the Western attacks there as well, I wonder if there's any connection to that and what the U.S. has just promised more ammunition to Ukraine. Are these sort of reinforcements potentially making a difference? Because clearly Russia, you know, when you bomb Western Ukraine, that's closer to Poland, closer to the EU as well.
It certainly could be. I mean, you know, you just referenced that meeting. We know that the Secretaries of Defense and the Secretary of State had a meeting with President Volodymyr Zelensky Sunday night. That meeting lasted about 3 hours, and what emerged from that meeting is that Washington has approved the sale of about $165 million in arms to Ukraine. In addition to that, $300 million U.S. in foreign military financing. Now, look, this is consistent with the plea that President Volodymyr Zelensky has been putting out there now for, you know, the duration of this war so far. He has been naming and shaming Western countries for not doing enough, for not giving Ukraine the types of weapons that it has been pleading for, really, for the past 2 months. That has since changed, and it's changed recently. We know that Canada, for example, committed howitzers to Ukraine. So certainly, we are seeing Western countries step up their efforts, and certainly a positive development, at least from the perspective of Volodymyr Zelensky, the fact that the Americans have committed all this additional financing. You know, as for what the Americans are saying, Washington says that Moscow appears to be failing in its mission that, you know, they had anticipated, that the Russians have had, at least according to the American perspective, to have overtaken the country far more quickly. The fact that it has lasted more than 2 months is, according to Washington, a failure in itself. So, you know, as for the situation right now, it is going to be a grinding mission. It is something that is lasting very long. And you can see, Nick, just the extent of the devastation and the destruction so far behind me. I'm in a town called Borodyanka, which is about an hour outside of Kyiv, the capital. These are 2 apartment buildings that have been destroyed by Russian airstrikes. And that just gives you an idea that, you know, even though these towns, these villages around Kyiv have been liberated, the scars of, you know, the ravages of this war will endure certainly for years to come.
I can only imagine what it's like to actually be there. That is CTV's Omar Sachedina, live on the ground a little northwest of Kyiv this morning. Thanks, Omar, for the reporting again. Appreciate this.